Welcome students, today we are going to start 10th chapter of history, that is India after independence. In this chapter we will talk about India post independence. Till now we had talked about the Indian national movement, how Swadeshi movement took place, then you had the non-cooperation movement, and then you had the civil disobedience movement, and then quit India movement that led as a foundation stone for the late India's independence. Now coming on the situation of after independence, as we said, we were happy with independence, but this happiness came along with the sadness that occurred because of the partition of Pakistan. So as a result, we had nearly 8 million refugees had come into the country from what was now Pakistan. These people had to be found homes and jobs. Then there was the problem of the princely states. Almost 500 of them, each ruled by a Maharaja or a Nawab, each of whom had to be persuaded to join the new nation. The problems of the refugees and of the princely states had to be addressed immediately. In the longer term, the new nation had to adopt a political system that would best serve the hopes and expectations of its population. And the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel worked around for the consolidation of these states in India. Now, in 1947, when we got independence, the population was around 345 million. It was also divided. There were divisions between high castes and low castes, between the majority Hindu community and Indians who practiced other faiths. To the problem of unity was added the problem of development. At independence, the vast majority of Indians lived in the villages. Farmers and peasants dependent on the monsoon for their survival. It means no rain, it means no crops. So did the non-farm sector of the rural economy, for if the crops failed, barbers, carpenters, weavers and other service groups would not get paid for their services there. Either in the cities, factory workers lived in crowded slums with little access to education or health care. Clearly, the new nation had to lift its masses out of poverty by increasing the productivity of agriculture and by promoting new job creating industries. Now, unity and development had to go hand in hand. If the division between different sections of India were not healed, they could result in violent and costly conflicts. High castes fighting with low castes, Hindu with Muslims and so on. At the same time, if the fruits of economic development did not reach the broad masses of the population, it could create fresh divisions. For example, between the rich and the poor, between cities and the countryside, between regions of India that were prosperous and regions that lagged behind. So this was happening during this time. We witnessed another tragic episode with the assassination of the Gandhiji by Nathuram Godse. He basically disagreed with the Gandhiji's ideology of Hindu-Muslim unity, and he said that India should be divided soon. Students, here you all can see in figure 1 Mahatma Gandhi's ashes being immersed in Allahabad, February 1948. Students, Nathuram Vinayak Godse was the assassinate of Mahatma Gandhi, who shot Gandhi in the chest 3 times at point blank range in New Delhi on 30 January 1948. As Godse was an advocate of Hindu nationalism from Pune, Maharashtra, who believed Gandhi to have favored the political demands of India's Muslim during the partition of India, plotted the assassination with Narayan Apte and 6 others, and after a trial that lasted over a year, Godse sentenced to death on 8 November 1949. And finally, Godse was hanged in the Ambala Central Jail on 15th November 1949. Less than 6 months after independence, the nation was in mourning. On 30th January 1948, Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated by a fanatic Nathuram Godse because he disagreed with Gandhiji's conviction that Hindu and Muslims should live together in harmony. That evening, a stunned nation heard Jawaharlal Nehru's moving statement over All India Radio, "Friends and comrades, the light has gone out of our lives and there is darkness everywhere. Our beloved leader, the father of the nation, is no more." Students, as you all know, our constitution is written. During the period of 1946 to 1949, we had the drafting of the constitution that took place, and finally on 26th of January, we had the constitution that came in a final shape. So, let me tell you the dates as our constitution being started written on 9th of December 1946 and completed on 26th of November 1949 and implemented on 26th of January 1950. So these are the 3 dates, and on 9th of December it was started written, and on 26th November 1949 it was completed, and on 26th of Jan 1950 it was implemented. So that is how it took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to complete. So our constitution guarantees right to equality, protect minorities and their rights, and whatever decisions are taken, they should be a kind of holistic decision which involves whole of the society, not just a few. One feature of the constitution was its adoption of universal adult franchise. Students, you all know, according to that, all Indians above the age of 21 would be allowed to vote in state and national elections. Students, as we had discussed in class 6th, 7th and yes, as well as in class 8th civics also, we had taken different ideas of the constitution from the different parts of the nation. For example, from USA we had taken fundamental rights and judiciary system. From Russia we had taken moral duties. From South Africa we had taken right to remedies of constitution, and from Germany we had taken emergency. From Japan we had taken glossary, etc. A second feature of the constitution was that it guaranteed equality before the law to all citizens, regardless of their caste or religious affiliation. There were some Indians who wished that the political system of the new nation be based on Hindu ideals and that India itself be run as a Hindu state. They pointed to the example of Pakistan, a country created explicitly to protect and further the interests of a particular religious community, the Muslims. However, the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was of the opinion that India could not and must not become a Hindu Pakistan. Beside Muslims, India also had large populations of Sikhs and Christians, as well as many Parsis and Jains. Under the new constitution, they would have the same rights as Hindus, the same opportunities when it came to seeking jobs in government or the private sector, the same rights before the law. And the third feature of the constitution was that it offered special privileges for the poorest and most disadvantaged Indians. The practice of untouchability, described as a slur and a blot on the fair name of India, was abolished. Hindu temples, previously open to only the higher castes were thrown open to all, including the former untouchables. After a long debate, the Constituent Assembly also recommended that a certain percentage of seats in legislatures as well as jobs in government be reserved for members of the lowest caste. It means reservation quota. Along with the former untouchables, the Adivasis, all scheduled tribes, were also granted reservation in seats and jobs. Like the scheduled caste, these Indians too had been deprived and discriminated against. The tribals had been deprived of modern healthcare and education, while their lands and forests had been taken away by more powerful outsiders. The new privileges granted them by the Constitution were meant to make amends for this. Now the powers was divided between the central and the state. Now there were three types of power that came up, and they were the union power or the union list that had slowly wasted into the powers such as defense, taxation system, foreign affairs. All those were under the center. Then we had state. State talked about the powers that were vested exclusively for a state only, such as health and education. However, there are certain issues. They are in concurrent list. Then you had forest and agriculture. All these became a part of a state as a union list, and therefore we had three lists that were used during that time. Another major debate in the Constituent Assembly concerned language. Many members believed that the English language should leave India with the British rulers. Its place, they argued, should be taken by Hindi. However, those who did not speak Hindi were of a different opinion. Speaking in the assembly, T.T. Krishnamachari conveyed a warning on behalf of people of the south, some of whom threatened to separate from India if Hindi was imposed on them. A compromise was finally arrived at, namely that while Hindi would be the official language of India, English would be used in the courts, the services, and the communication between one state and another. Many Indians contributed framing of the Constitution. Many Indians contributed to the framing of the Constitution, but perhaps the most important role was played by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Bhimrao Ambedkar, who was chairman of the drafting committee. Students, this is very, very important. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee, as I told you earlier also, and under whose supervision the document was finalized. In his final speech to the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Ambedkar pointed out that political democracy had to be accompanied by economic and social democracy. Giving the right to vote would not automatically lead to the removal of other inequalities such as between rich and poor or between upper and lower castes with the new constitution. And now let's see how were states to be formed. In the 1920s, before the independence, the Indian National Congress, the main party of the freedom struggle, had promised that once the country won independence, each major linguistic group would have its own provinces. It means we would separate out the country based on the major linguistic areas in India. However, after independence, the Congress did not take any steps to honor this promise, for India had been divided on the basis of religion. Despite the wishes and efforts of Mahatma Gandhi, freedom had come not to one nation but to two. As a result of the partition of India, more than 1 million people had been killed in feuds between Hindus and Muslims. Both Prime Minister Nehru and Deputy Prime Minister Vallabhbhai Patel were against the creation of linguistic states. After the partition, Nehru said disruptionist tendencies had come to the fore. To check them, the nation had to be strong and united. Both Prime Minister Nehru and Deputy Prime Minister Vallabhbhai Patel were against the creation of linguistic states. After the partition, Nehru said disruptions tendencies had come to the fore. To check them, the nation had to be strong and united. Now, what happened? Despite of this fact, there were protests going on throughout the country. The strongest protest came from the Telugu-speaking Madras Presidency. Potti Siramulu talked about separate state for the people of Andhra Pradesh. Now he went on a hunger strike and ultimately he died. On 15 December 1952, 58 days into his fast, Potti Siramulu died. As a newspaper put it, the news of the passing away of Siramulu engulfed entire Andhra in chores. The protests were so widespread and intense that the central government was forced to give it to the demand. Thus, on 1st October 1953, the new state of Andhra came into being, which subsequently became Andhra Pradesh. Andhra was the first state that was separated out. After the creation of Andhra, other linguistic communities also demanded their own separate states. A state reorganization commission was set up, which submitted its report in 1956, recommending the redrawing of district and provincial boundaries to form compact provinces of Assamese, Bengali, Odia, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada and Telugu speakers respectively. The large Hindi-speaking region of North India was also to be broken up into several states. A little later, in 1960, the bilingual state of Bombay was divided into separate states of Marathi and Gujarati speakers. In 1966, the state of Punjab was also divided into Punjab and Haryana, the former for the Punjabi speakers who were also mostly Sikhs, the latter for the rest who spoke not Punjabi but versions of Haryanvi or Hindi. So later on in 1950, Maharashtra and Gujarat that were separated, and in 1966 Punjab and Haryana that were separated. पंजाब में बेसिकली कौन थे? Sikhs went to Punjab and हरियाणा में हरियाणवी speaker went to Haryana, and the recent division we can say were Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Uttarakhand, and as Uttarakhand also separated from UP, है ना, and in 2014 Telangana separated from out from Andhra Pradesh. Finally, we had New India. Students, now here in this figure 5a, you all can see the making of linguistic states, Indian provinces and princely states before 14th August 1947. So, this pink part is showing princely states and this yellowish part is showing British India. Here similarly, in this figure 5b, you all can see Indian states before 1st November 1956. So, beta this pink part is showing erstwhile princely states and yellow part is showing other states. A state ceased to be princely state as and when its prince agreed to merger with India or Pakistan or was defeated. But many of these states were retained by administrative units until 31st October 1956. Hence, the category erstwhile princely states for the period 1947 to 48 to 31 October 1956. Now, here you all can see this yellow part is showing your other states. Now, as you all had seen figure 5a, 5b and 5c. So, what you had noticed, how the princely states disappear in figure 5b, and now states that were formed in 1956. Now, planning for development. So students, when we got independence, planning of that thing is very, very important. So in 1950, the government set up planning commission to help design and execute suitable policies for economic development. There was a broad agreement on what was called a mixed economy model. Here, both the state and the private sector would play important and complementary roles in increasing production and generating jobs. What specifically these roles were to be: which industries should be initiated by the state and which by the market. How to achieve a balance between the different regions and states was to be defined by the Planning Commission. Now, the key idea of Planning Commission is to working for growth, for self-reliance, for equity, for separation of powers. So, all those became the sole idea, and you had the private sector and the government sector that started to develop. The vital, all the key industry were kept with the government sector or the public sector. As students, we did a lot of planning. As here in figure 7, you all can see work going on at the Gandhi Sagar Bandh. This was the first of the 4 dams built on the Chambal River in Madhya Pradesh. It was completed in 1960. Now, in 1956, the second 5-year plan was formulated. This focused strongly on the development of heavy industries such as steel and on building of large dams. These sectors would be under the control of the state. This focus on heavy industry and the effort at state regulation of the economy was to guide economic policy for the next few decades. This approach had many strong supporters but also some vocal critics. Students, as here you all can see in figure 8, Jawaharlal Nehru at the Bhilai steel plant. The Bhilai steel plant was set up with the help of the former Soviet Union in 1959. Located in the backward rural area of Chhattisgarh, it came to be seen as an important sign of the development of modern India after independence. Now, as Mahatma Gandhi follower Mirabai wrote in 1949, by science and machinery, he means mankind may get huge returns for a time, but ultimately will come desolation. We have got to study nature's balance and develop our lives within her laws if we are to survive as a physically healthy and morally decent species. तो हमें बैलेंस करके चलना है नेचर से according to Mirabai. And now during this period, the search of independent foreign policy, during this period the World War II was going on. Now there were 2 superpowers in the world wars. First was the Soviet power and the second was American power. Now Soviet looking forward to American power for collaboration to form India. Nehru as the Prime Minister had the separate strength. So India said India neither aligned to the Soviet power nor it would align to the American power, and we would remain isolated, or we can say neutral. And this formation led to be NAM, it means non-aligned movement, and with this other countries also joined India with same motives such as Egypt, Yugoslavia, Indonesia, Ghana and India. Many other countries joined by 1970s. Later on, we had various other countries, they had joined. Then we had new independent state which participated in the conference that took place in the Bungu, Indonesia in 1955. There the Asian nation continued to oppose the idea of colonialism. So students, now here in this picture you all can see leaders of Asian and African countries meet at Budgao, Indonesia in 1955. Over 29 newly independent states participated in this famous conference to discuss how Afro-Asian nation could continue to oppose colonialism and Western domination. Now let's see the nation 60 years on. On 15th August 2007, India celebrated 60 years of its existence as a free nation. How well has the country done in this time? And to what extent has it fulfilled the ideals set out in its constitution? So that India is still united and that it is still democratic, and achievements that we might justly be proud of. Many foreign observers had felt that India could not survive as a single country. However, as many as 13 general elections have been held since independence now, as well as hundreds of states and local elections, there is a free press as well as independent judiciary. Finally, the fact that people speak different languages or practice different faiths has not come in the way of national unity. In many parts of rural India, they are not allowed access to water, souls, temples, parks and other public places, and despite the secular ideals enshrined in the constitution, there have been clashes between different religious groups in many states. Above all, as many observers had noted, some parts of India and some groups of Indians have benefited a great deal from economic development. They live in large houses and dine in expensive restaurants, send their children to expensive private schools and take expensive foreign holidays. At the same time, many others continue to live below the poverty line. It means your BPL, housed in urban slums or living in remote villages on lands that yield little, that cannot afford to send their children to school. So here, as in figure 11, you all can see Dharavi in Bombay is one of the world's largest slums. Now here you all can notice the high rise building in the background. Here you all can see big buildings are standing over this slum area. Now the constitution recognizes equality before the law. In real life, some Indians are more equal than others, judged by the standards it set itself at independence. The Republic of India has not been a great success, but it has not been a failure either. Now, if we talk about the present day situation, we had seen that we worked around freedom of press, independence judiciary, different languages, check various violence against Dalits, check discrimination, clashes between religious groups to be checked, bridge gap between rich and poor. So these things we had done. So this is how we covered 10th chapter as well as history book also of class 8.